We're going to have a look at the attempts to get a government up and running in Northern Ireland. And the first of these attempts is 1973, 1974, and you'll see there are two parts to it. It's really about setting up an assembly and an executive, and also setting up a Council of Ireland. The Council of Ireland was going to be decided through discussions at Sunningdale in December 1973, and the elections for the Stormont Assembly or the Executive would be in June 1973. So we come to look at this idea, and it's all dominated by power sharing, this idea of Unionists and Nationalists sharing power in Belfast. The elections show some very clear results. So the UUUC, who were anti-power sharing, they won 32.1% of the vote. And that was quite a sizable minority. You'll see it's nearly a third of those who were voting for people who did not want to share power. They didn't want to share power with nationalists in Stormont. But it wasn't all lost, and you can see Faulkner and his OUP unionists, some of them were happy to share power, and they won 29.3%. The SDLP and the Alliance Party of Northern Ireland also won a share, and collectively then they saw that 67.9% of people in these elections had voted for pro-power sharing parties, people who were prepared to share power with the other side. So Unionists with Nationalists, Nationalists with Unionists. So it's important then to see that just after that they had a meeting for the Council of Ireland to decide what that would look like. They had people there from the Northern Ireland new government that had been set up, but they had to be pro-power sharing, and so that excluded those who had been elected as part of the UUUC. It also included people from the Republic of Ireland and from the London government, and they all sat down and discussed what they thought the Council of Ireland should look like. And ultimately they decided they would have 14 members on this council from both north and south of the border, and that they would then run those ideas that they came up with past a consultative assembly, just people who were going to have a look at the ideas that the Council of Ireland members had come up with. So they decided what it was going to look like, but that doesn't necessarily say everybody's going to like it, and so we'll come to that in a minute. At those Council of Ireland discussions in Sunningdale, the British and Irish governments also make very important statements. So from the British government in London, they pretty much say that if the majority of people in Northern Ireland want a united Ireland, that they will not stand in the way of that. And Dublin says that if there will only be a united Ireland if there is a majority of people who want it. So London very much speaking there to the nationalists to say that if most people want a united Ireland, they can have it, where Dublin are speaking mostly to the Unionists to reassure them that they'll not be pushing for a united Ireland unless, of course, a majority of people showed that they wanted it. So these are important things, and those statements from London and Dublin we'll see again, certainly when we get to the 1990s, and reiterated over and over again in agreements after this one. So how do people react? Well, the SDLP, a nationalist party in Northern Ireland, they were pleased because they saw that this brought Northern Ireland closer to Dublin. I suppose they, as nationalists, felt that they would have the support of the Dublin government to help them if they were going to be working in Northern Ireland politics. Brian Faulkner was glad. He said that it showed that Dublin accepted Northern Ireland existed, but not everybody is pleased. There's a group called the Ulster Army Council, and they were formed to resist this what's called an Irish dimension, essentially where Ireland would have any influence, say, or opportunity to sway the decisions in Northern Ireland. And the official Unionist Party, the OUP, they definitely didn't like it and they rejected it. So other reactions then are shown in 1974. There's a general election. That means it's an election to bring MPs into the London government at Westminster. And from Northern Ireland, there were 12 constituencies, 12 seats available, and 11 of them at this stage were won by anti-power sharing, and that was a big shift. You can see whenever we were voting for the Stormont executive that it was 32.1% who were voting anti-power sharing, and now what we have is about 80% and 11 out of the 12 constituencies won by anti-power sharing. So it showed a lot of people who had been open to it after they'd seen how it played out weren't happy, and they maybe didn't like the Council of Ireland agreement either. So they show their dissatisfaction through a strike, which results in shutdown in a lot of Northern Ireland businesses and a lot of Northern Ireland life in May 1974. It was organised by the Ulster Workers' Council, and when they tried to organise a back to work rally, only 200 people attended, and so it showed that there was a lot of support for this strike, which showed they didn't like what had been agreed in 1973-74 at the Council of Ireland and in terms of the Assembly and Executive. The Prime Minister, that's the British Prime Minister, a man called Harold Wilson, he was newly appointed as Prime Minister, and he called people in Northern Ireland spongers, because he said really what was happening was there was all this violence, and yet the British government were expected to pay to fix it. There were car bombs in Dublin and Monaghan to show that people did not like these things that had been agreed. And so as a result of all this dissatisfaction, Brian Faulkner, he had resigned on the 28th of May, and Britain takes over in Northern Ireland again with direct rule on the 30th of May 1974. And so we're left again in Northern Ireland at this stage with no government, and they'll have to look for another attempt later on.